But we have to face up to one absolutely bleak and brutal reality, and that is that without America we are defenseless. Defenseless. Look, America and Israel chose this war, and there are consequences for everybody. You're absolutely right. Just as there would be consequences for the whole world if Iran was able to get hold of a usable nuclear bomb. So, that's what you've got to weigh up. That was their decision. It affected us. The British Prime Minister has made a catastrophic error in not allowing America the use, especially of Diego Garcia. I can only guess he wanted to sort of invalidate it as a useful place so that his shameful sellout to Mauritius could happen. Trump is obviously very, very angry. But the fact that we did nothing other than forbid the Americans from being operational didn't stop Iranian missiles being fired at Cyprus. And then, of course, the Prime Minister U-turned the other way and said you can use the bases, and then we weren't going to send anybody to the Gulf, and now we are going to send people to the Gulf, and frankly, we're all over the place. And it seems that the Prime Minister has upset the Americans, he's upset the Cypriots, he's upset much of the Middle East, and whilst he may be right not to commit us militarily to direct involvement, the truth is we couldn't do it anyway. We haven't got a Royal Navy. And when the American president said this, we thought it was an outrageous insult, but now we have the First Sea Lord saying exactly the same thing. So, it has raised some very, very important issues. Hormuz, obviously very, very crucial. You asked the question, would it be fair? Is it fair? No, we need the Straits of Hormuz opened, and I wouldn't for a minute think that the Americans will walk away from that. But is it fair that a British government, a conservative British government, slapped on super taxes on North Sea oil and gas, forbade onshore production of natural gas? Is it fair that we now face a real gas emergency? And it's coming down the tracks at us very, very quickly. It is wholly unnecessary. We could be not just self-sufficient in natural gas, we could be an exporter of natural gas and have much lower prices. And I'll say this one more time. I've said this before, no one's ever picked it up. Nobody in the press pack's picked it up. The government says if we produced our own oil and gas, it would make no difference to the price because there is a global price. Utter rot. When we buy LNG from America, the natural gas comes out of the ground, it is liquefied, it travels across the Atlantic, where it is regassed and then distributed to where it needs to be. That's not the spot price. That's massively more than the spot price. And 2 Fridays ago, when natural gas had doubled in Britain from this time last year, in Chicago, it was 2% cheaper. If you produce gas close to where you use it, it's massively cheaper. And on oil, the news reports this morning, oil's trading at $106 a barrel. To buy oil now from the Middle East and ship it to us, or wherever else it may be, we're paying $145, $150 a barrel. And this is, as I say, the Conservatives destroyed the North Sea, forbade on-land production. Labour are continuing with this, and we've just got to get the truth out to people that we could be self-sufficient, we could be an exporter, and everybody's home bill and our industrial prices would be substantially lower, and that really would be fair. But I'm afraid it's just one of those many issues why I came back into politics 20 months ago. A consensus between the two so-called main parties on virtually every single major issue. But it's okay, because copycat Kemi has now decided that everything Robert Jenrick says is absolutely brilliant, and she's going to follow all of it. And one quick last point on this, it's quite fun. So Kemi Badenoch went to a North Sea oil rig last week to say, drill, baby, drill. It wasn't an oil rig. It was a decommissioning rig being closed down because of the taxes they put on the North Sea and investment being withdrawn, which I think actually rather perfectly sums the whole thing up. Thank you for that. Anja Pop from Channel 4 News.
Hiya, Anja Pop from Channel 4 News. A question for you, please, Mr. Farage. On Iran, Rachel Reeves has said she's angry with President Trump for starting this war. Are you?
I'm not angry with him for starting this war if, and by the way, he's been elected saying no more endless foreign wars. His instincts are not, his instincts are not to do this. And this is not something he's been arguing since he was president. He's been making these arguments for over 20 years, way before he was in politics, asking questions about open-ended wars. So what is it that, okay, Israeli encouragement, I understand that. The Israelis are there and Iran wants to obliterate them and kill them all. So I can understand why Israel would want to do something like this. What persuaded Trump to do it? What was the key motivation? And it's difficult, listening to the press conferences sometimes, to work that out. If the goal of removing Iran as a nuclear power is achieved, the world will have been done a massive favour, even if there are some quite big short-term costs. And there are big short-term costs, but ones that we should never have allowed ourselves to be so vulnerable on. And, we're facing the prospect. If Hormuz is not opened relatively quickly, I think gas rationing is a possibility. Gas rationing is a possibility by late summer this year. And that, for a country that has an estimated, a geologist estimate of 10 billion barrels of unexploited oil and gas, is a dreadful situation for us to be in. And I think off the back of this, we need to rethink completely what our strategy is. Are we going to go on relying on just-in-time supply chains? Are we going to go on relying on increased food imports, energy imports, strategic material imports, if there are alternatives to do it ourselves? And I think the whole world is now moving to a perspective where it judges things on national interest. And I think Keir Starmer's comments about the European Union yesterday showed he is out of date, doesn't get with where the world has moved. Samara Gill, Talk TV.
I do know we're focusing on pensioners, but just to focus on our out-of-control youths, Sadiq Khan boasted that 2 people got arrested at the Clapham riots a few days ago. What would you have done differently in that regard?
Well, if you're a country that that decriminalises shoplifting, if you decriminalise shoplifting up to £200, which is what's happened over the last 5 years, I suppose, roughly, don't be surprised when what people think is acceptable behaviour rises up in terms of its danger and its threat and its intimidation. And I think there's a lot of people blaming social media platforms. I understand that. But even when you shut down elements on social media platforms, others pop up, others emerge. The people we should be blaming are not the social media platforms. The people we should be blaming are those that behaved in such an appalling, frightening, intimidatory manner. And I'm afraid London is broken. London is lawless. We launched a big campaign on this last year. I was told by so many people I was wrong, because the England and Wales crime survey says crime is going down. But I mean, basically now, if you're a victim of a crime in London, you're very unlikely to even bother to report it, because the police will do nothing, and you'll damage your prospects with insurance companies going ahead. So, yeah, they were appalling scenes in Clapham and elsewhere in the country, and I'm afraid people are going to have to realise that actions have consequences, and all low-level crime needs to be prosecuted, because that does stop this move up if you raise the bars, or if you raise the levels of acceptability. And this worked in New York, It worked in New York, where Giuliani turned that city around from one of the most dangerous and frightening in America to one of the safest. And he did it with a bottom-up approach to get rid of low-level crime, and that's where you start. So, yeah, appalling scenes. And actually, it points to, I'm going to go back to this, actually. You know, June the 3rd, 2024, I announced I was coming out of retirement to come back into politics, and one of the reasons I cited was societal breakdown. Clapham the other night was a very clear example of societal breakdown, and frightening and worrying. Thank you. Joseph Draper, LBC.
Mr. Farage, Robert Jenrick, who was sitting next to you, seemed quite surprised when you told us that your spokesperson was no longer a spokesperson for the party because of his comments about Grenfell. Don't you think you should have told your own party members that had happened before announcing it to the media today?
No, because it happened about an hour ago, or an hour and a half ago. And it's for Richard Tice to make that announcement, not me. Look, this is not, I'm sorry, it's not a one-man band. You know, I've given individuals responsibility. Robert's brief is very, very clear. That's what today's press conference is all about. This is somebody who was very recently appointed, who, whilst he has a track record in building houses and new towns and stuff like that, clearly acted yesterday in a pretty hurtful, insulting way to an awful lot of people. Sophie Church, Daily Mail.
Thank you. Keir Starmer this morning has been accused of using the war in Iran to draw closer to the EU. Is there anything the PM is set to agree on with the Union that you would repeal if you get into government?
Anything I would do, sorry?
Anything that you would repeal,
Oh, I
draw
see.
back on?
Of course. Yes, all of it. I remember doing a debate against Nick Clegg, a head-to-head live debate against Nick Clegg, and the issue of the development of a European army became a key part of that debate. It became a very important part of the debate in the referendum, and the Leave side generally believed better to put our faith in NATO than to believe that European countries, which at the time were only spending 1% of their budgets on defence, was the way to go. As the European defence policy has developed, one of the big boasts is that by Europe all clubbing together, they can all spend even less on defence. I don't see any prospect of a coherent European defence force where people can agree and work together, and to go too far down that road would be a horrendous mistake. Trump is not going to leave NATO, all right? He's very, very angry with us right at the moment, but you could argue he's done NATO a favour by making people start to pay a little bit more money into it. And we will not always agree with America. You know, everyone's looking at this through the prism of Trump. Forget that. Think about any American president. And there are things they will do that we will agree with and things they will do that we will disagree with. But we have to face up to one absolutely bleak and brutal reality, and that is that without America we are defenceless. Defenceless. And so to have upset the Americans so unnecessarily over the use of Diego is a massive error.